Hello, and a big autumnal welcome to you all. Following a few months of rethinking the blogs, may I now welcome you to my New Look blog, which is also going to be available in audio format as it was before, if you require it. What's new, I hear you ask? Well, I will be sharing a short blog each week with a different aspect of nature each time. These blogs will have been designed to support the work I do in primary schools across Herefordshire and Gloucestershire, helping inspire young people to connect with nature. I'm also looking to help adults outside of schools connect to nature. By learning more about the world around us in the UK and the wider world, can help people begin to see how nature should be valued and cared for as they reach out and connect to nature. So without further ado, let's dive into our first episode for October. And there is an old saying, which I've taken as the title for this. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So, to start off my new blogs, we're going to be looking at trees. No one species in particular this time, just trees in general. Why? Because I'm passionate about trees. Being in woodland is my favourite place to be. And I use woods to help people feel better. Some of what I share with you may be things that you already know, and in which case that's fine. I'm just reminding you about it. Other points may be new to you. But either way, I hope I can encourage you to find out more, to get outside and connect to some of the trees that we will cover today and in more detail over the months to come. And of course, as I always do, there will be pictures there for you to enjoy. A tree is so much more than just a tree. A tree offers home, food, and safety to many species of wildlife. They help us to be healthier, useful materials to build with and make things from. Some even provide us with medicine, dyes, and inks. So, let us start by saying, not all trees are the same. There is a great deal of diversity in their size, shape, growth habits, where they will grow, and their impact on the world around them, what we've used them for, and even in the spiritual world. I want to first explain that trees are like most species. They have two main purposes in life. First is to live as long as they can, and they do whatever they can to make this happen. The second is to ensure the survival of their species, and that are the seeds that they produce and then cast out into the woods around them to hopefully grow and become one big tree at some point. And so in this first picture, we can see a collection of nuts. One of the biggest draws on a tree is circulating the energy, nutrients, and the water that it needs to have go through the whole of its body, basically. Long ago, when the world was young, some 500 million years ago, trees and plants chose to live a sedentary life. In other words, to grow, live, and die in the same place. Therefore, they had to be able to extract all that they needed from where they lived. Whereas creatures, which includes us humans, chose a mobile life. This gives the advantage of being able to move to a new area when the present one is exhausted. Eventually, humans chose to take a middle ground, to settle in one place, but with the options of moving if needed. Like all living things, trees are faced with challenges to their lives. The biggest challenge is created by the weather. In warm climates, trees have to evolve to be able to thrive all year round. And this next picture shows your typical tropical scene. Whereas in climates like ours in the UK, where it is warm in summer and cold in winter, they must deal with their biggest threat of not enough energy to keep them producing their leaves, but despite what the weather's doing. The amount of sunlight is less and weaker in winter. There's cold winds, there's rain that chill the trees, while strong winds threaten to bring them down as a canopy of leaves offers a lot of resistance. Therefore, trees must find a way to cope with this problem, and they have found two ways of doing it. One large group of trees that have the large flat leaves, these are called broad-leaved trees. And every autumn, as the hours of daylight begin to shorten and the weather starts to be colder, they prepare for this by casting off all their leaves. In suitable weather conditions, they will give a wonderful show of colors: the greens, the yellows, the oranges, deep reds, and finally brown. In this picture, you can see the leaves in autumn in their riot of color. Also, a close-up of one of the broad-leafed trees like an oak. The leaves of the deciduous trees, for that is what they are called, are trees like oak, birch, and beech. And these will turn wonderful colors because the sap that flows through the trees from the roots right out through to the branches, it's a bit like the blood that flows around our body. And they take their cue to prepare by shortening hours of daylight and the colder temperatures that start to appear in autumn. To cope with this, the tree draws its sap away from its extremities, like the branches, back into the trunk. Here it can be protected. As part of this process, the tree absorbs nutrients that are in the leaves, and a scab is formed where the leaf joins onto the branch. This severs the connection, and the leaves, as a result of this, the chlorophyll in them breaks down, and that's what reveals the colors that are still there. This picture shows a tree in winter, bare of its leaves. But if you were to look closely at their branches, you would see there are small buds there, which in spring, when the weather warms and the daylight starts to get longer, they will open up and become new leaves. This picture shows the trees as they will be for the winter. I love this period, for it gives us the opportunity to study the wonderful shape of the tree and the structure, which is normally hidden underneath the skirts of those leaves. In this next picture, we can see how other trees choose to evolve in a way that meant they could cope with the cold and the wetness of winter. In these two pictures, you can see the evergreen trees, and these include trees like yew, holly, and Scots pine. Many of them decided to have leaves that were like needles, very thin, as you can see in the one picture. With the holly tree, it decided to have a middle ground. It's a broader leaf than a needle, but not as big as the broad leaves, and it's coated to be a much harder, more wind-resistant, chill-resistant, and this helps them to cope better. Now, whereas it appears that evergreens do not shed their leaves, however, the trees do drop some of their leaves every year. But unlike the deciduous ones, where they shed them all in the autumn and then new ones grow in the spring, the evergreens have a gradual loss throughout the year, and new ones grow through as the old ones go. And this gives the effect of not dropping their leaves. Now, having looked at how these trees cope with the weather to ensure their survival, their second aim is to continue the species. And this is done by producing seeds. This is where I think nature becomes fascinating. The variety of ways these trees must ensure their species survives. And you'll see in this picture just some of the many different ways trees manage to get their seeds out to where they need to be. For a tree to reproduce young trees, they must produce pollen, which is then sent from a male flower part, called the antler, to the female part, called the stigma, of another tree of the same species. The pollen is fertilized and becomes a seed. Now, this pollen can be transferred in a variety of ways. Some very clever trees can self-pollinate, which means that the tree can pollinate its own flowers, as it has both male and female parts on it. Otherwise, the tree needs to get its pollen to another tree. And these are some of the ways that they use. So some trees, like willow, hazel, oak, and birch, will rely on the wind to carry their seeds, whereas horse chestnut and sycamore use a combination of gravity and wind. And on this picture you can see both in action. Now, other trees, like willow and silver birch, rely on gravity, wind, and water to carry their seeds. To do this, they need to be near a watercourse, like a river or a fairly large stream. Then, when the seeds are ready, they detach from the tree, and gravity and a bit of wind will help them to land, if they're lucky, in the water. And if they're light and fluffy, so they will float. And here you can see some of the trees where they've got the right fluffy seeds to be able to float. Other trees exploit the fact that creatures visit them to get their seeds spread around. Trees like maple, oak, and hazel all produce nuts, which are taken away by jays and squirrels, like our native red and the more invasive grey. They take the nuts and they hide them, ready for winter. Now, they will take hundreds and hundreds of these, and they'll forget about some of them. These are able to have a chance at growing. And here you can see the creatures busy helping those trees to spread their seeds around the forest. Now, trees like yew, holly, hawthorn, and rowan have fleshy berries, which birds like thrushes, blackbirds, and robins will eat. The undigested seeds pass through their system and drop out in their droppings. And here you can see some of the birds enjoying those berries. Now, you may think that that's the end of the story, but there's one last point to remember. Having created pollen, got it fertilized, transported it into a form that could travel to a space where there's enough space for it to grow, it's just a matter of time before there is a tree. Yep. Well, unfortunately, it's not that simple. Let's think about just one tree, an oak tree. In autumn, lots of nuts will fall from the tree. Some will land on a stony area, and they won't grow at all. Some nuts will be taken away and eaten by animals, like the boar, squirrels, and jays. There will be those that land on the soil and have the right conditions to sprout, and they even grow into tiny trees with 2 little leaves, only to be eaten by some deer or boar, or trampled on by people out walking. However, one little nut will land in a hole in the ground, perhaps in amongst a tangle of brambles. The conditions there are good to grow, and our little seed germinates, and eventually a little baby tree comes along. And all the time while it's within the area of those thorny brambles, it's being protected. Eventually, it grows big enough to no longer be eaten by deer, and in the years to come, it gets bigger and bigger. But still, it's not there yet. It now needs to wait for an old tree to fall so it can have a chance. And then, when the old tree falls, or perhaps is cut down by humans, all those small young trees that have stopped just short of the canopy of big trees, waiting and waiting, must now pop into a quick growth, because it's only by being the fastest one to the top that you get to go on to be a big old tree. That's, of course, assuming that before you get to that point of being big, another tree doesn't fall on you and damage you. Or no other trees, it might just be too small, too slow, and it has to wait. So when next you take a moment to stand and study a tree, enjoy it, connect with it, and remember what it took for that tree to be there. Doesn't it deserve us looking after it? Until next time, remember to tread softly upon this earth. Join me next week for another look at the wonderful world of nature.